Logocentrism, this idea that literature and reading and writing is at the center of your culture, has been a long defining idea in Russia. What the websites that I look at, I think, are trying to do is trying to recapture that idea and that feeling. I do research on the Russian Orthodox Church and its online presence, and I look specifically at how the Russian Orthodox Church's websites talk about classical Russian literature, so Pushkin, Dostoevsky, and how they use talking about those writers as a way of building their own form of politics and Russian nationalism for the contemporary moment. Yeah, so I've had a lifelong interest in religion. I find it super fascinating. I've always been really interested in religious issues and topics, especially in how they intersect with politics, in really all sorts of contexts. You know, it was very clear to me that if I was working on contemporary Russian media, that the church was a huge part of this story that really was not being talked about. The Russian Orthodox Church, since the end of the Soviet Union, has really gained a lot of prominence in Russian life. They've gotten a lot of support from the government, a lot of funding. It's this kind of huge aspect of Russian life today that I don't think a lot of people were thinking about as it related to media. In both interviewing people who worked at these websites and in looking through their materials, especially the stuff that they post that's focused on literature, it became very clear that the people that they're trying to attract are educated professionals who may not necessarily be regular church goers. These educated professionals, in a lot of cases, have been associated with actually opposition movements in Russia. There was a huge protest movement within Russia, and a lot of the people that were on the streets, at least people assumed that they were this kind of urban, educated liberals. You know, what I see on these websites is the church's attempt to kind of reach out to those people to get them interested in the way that the church sees Russian culture and society, and to kind of stop them from being oppositional to the government and oppositional to state policies, many of which benefit the church very directly. They were given a lot of their buildings back. They were given really good contracts on certain things. For instance, the Russian Orthodox Church had a bottled water company called a Holy Source or Holy Spring that you could buy in stores. So I see my research as part of a larger story of how the Russian Orthodox Church has been working to gain influence in Russian politics and over Russian society in general. So one really prominent one is the Orthodox Church's very strong connections with the military. In the summer of 2020, the military got its own cathedral, a very large and imposing structure that worked to cement the connections between the two organizations. It's these larger moments that I think a lot of people in the United States will see, and they'll see the Orthodox Church as this important wing of the government. You'll see things like Orthodox bishops blessing nuclear weapons, things that would seem totally outrageous to us here. What I try to do in my research is show that it's not only kind of this really blunt, in-your-face examples, but that there's a kind of soft power as well that the church is trying to exercise. That by going towards Russian literature especially, you know, Russian literature has long been this hugely unifying force within Russian culture. Everyone knows Dostoevsky and Tolstoy. And so what the church is doing with these websites and in talking about literature so explicitly is showing that at the base of all of this, at the base of this great cultural expression, has been Orthodox teaching and Orthodox thought. And that for Russia to have a unified national idea going forward, it's going to have to look to the church to help guide it on questions of culture.